The world is spinning faster and faster around its axis, or it feels like that anyway, right? The world is more volatile, more uncertain, more ambiguous. Businesses need to operate differently if they want to stay standing in that. You need fast decision making with less facts on the table while you're inundated in ever more data. I specialize in my business helping companies or organizations that have descended into chaos. The podcast called The Business Emergency Room, so that's where the term triage comes from. But yeah, I typically come in later than I would like at a point that businesses are hurting. Try to really create a turnaround quickly. But also in the process, help these organizations and people with some tools to just be more resilient in this tumultuous business environment.
The Intelligence Forge podcast is sponsored by Permasize AI Forge. The Intelligence Forge podcast is sponsored by Permasize AI Forge. At Permasize AI Forge, we know you're ambitious, but are manual tasks like admin, lead generation, nurturing, and onboarding holding you back from truly scaling your business? Imagine saving dozens of hours every week, freeing you to deepen client relationships and execute high-impact strategy. Our clients aren't just imagining it. They're saving countless hours per week and doubling their revenue within months. We custom-build AI automation systems that eliminate the grind. From effortless lead generation and nurturing to seamless onboarding, we give you back the most valuable resource, your time, so you can focus on building those vital human connections and driving strategic growth. Stop letting repetitive tasks limit your potential. It's time to build a business that works for you, not the other way around. Ready to unlock your true scaling power? Visit PermasizeAIForge.com and book your free AI audit call today to discover how you can save time and double your revenue. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the Intelligence Forge YouTube channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new episode.
From business chaos to strategic clarity, turning crisis into competitive advantage. Welcome to the Intelligence Forge. Today, I'm thrilled to have Maartje with us. She's the business triage specialist who help companies turn chaos into competitive advantage. Welcome to the show, Maartje.
Thanks for having me, Emmanuel.
All right.
Be here.
It's a pleasure. All right. I'd love you to start by having you introduce yourself and the Chaos Game Consulting in your own words. What do you do? And who do you serve?
So, yeah, my name is Maartje. That's a traditional Dutch name. I grew up in and near Amsterdam.
Okay.
And I'm an engineer by training. Worked for a couple of decades as international staff in oil and gas, working largely frontier projects in all the very attractive places that oil is typically found around the globe. And resigned from that career to go out on my own. I found a niche for myself in project and change management, but then specifically in the most chaotic of them all. I also did a lot of work over the years in disaster management. I'm a sailor, a skipper, so then you learn also to make decisions under pressure. But I'm also trained in Stanford strategic risk and decision quality methodology. And I really saw a place in that disaster decision-making skills in business. The world is spinning faster and faster around its axis, or it feels like that anyway, right? The world is more volatile, more uncertain, more ambiguous. Businesses need to operate differently if they want to stay standing in that. You need fast decision-making with less facts on the table while you're inundated in ever more data. I specialize in my business helping companies or organizations that have descended into chaos. I have a podcast called The Business Emergency Room, so that's where the term triage comes from. But yeah, I typically come in later than I would like at a point that businesses are hurting. Try to really create a turnaround quickly. But also in the process, help these organizations and people with some tools to just be more resilient in this tumultuous business environment.
Fantastic. Thanks so much. I didn't even know that you were a sailor. Again, thank you so much for sharing that with us. Okay, that's very incredible. All right. I saw on your LinkedIn, which you just also alluded to now, you kick off the season 2 of your Business Emergency Room podcast, and it's now on YouTube. Okay, what's the most exciting thing happening at the Chaos Game Consulting right now that you are particularly proud of?
So it's Like that I'm able to get in a bit earlier with organizations. I think through the work of the podcast and whatever else is happening, I'm getting in front of the right audiences a little sooner. I think I'm still a bit of a unique species, and people don't know that people like I exist until they find that they tell their friends that they're in so much trouble they need somebody and they get referred. I think people looking for help a little sooner or managed to find me also largely because of the podcast or the public speaking I do, and invite or welcome in help sooner, which I think is great because I worked with a lot of tech oriented B2B, right, which is working on the solutions that we need in this world, the solutions that will enable tomorrow. And they have good products and services that are very much needed and are struggling for things that have nothing to do with that. So if I can play a share in having more of those businesses around and succeed, yeah, that feels very worthwhile.
All right, that's great. Thank you so much. But I'm curious about your journey when you started, Chaos Game Consulting back in 2019. How did you start? What kind of funding did you actually have available to you when you started, when you launched? What drove you to focus basically on business, triage, and chaos management? That's really curious.
Yeah, I think I was one of those lucky ones. I did not necessarily position myself, right? I didn't actually think I was going to be venturing out on my own. Particularly the whole idea of doing business development terrified me. I'm also very Dutch. And so if you are trying to sell yourself as a consultant, to me it felt like I had to put myself out there. And in the Netherlands, we don't talk about ourselves and use superlatives in the same sentence. That's kind of like a sin. So I figured I was going to be awful at that, but I was getting approached by people I'd worked with because I'd worked internationally with so many different companies and so many different people. I got approached for pieces of work and I just set up a limited company so I could actually invoice people for work I was doing for them. Initially, I mainly worked on stuff that just landed in my lap. But it was very clear that people kept coming back to me for much the same stuff.
Wow.
And I now have teenagers and I had to choose to stay put because I kept moving. I had to choose to stay put somewhere for a bit. So it's really only been since 2024 that I made a very conscious pivot to put myself proactively out in the market in this space, right? So I did not have to attract ample funding. I'd made some money in dirty oil, so I had some breathing room. So I had some space to have some gaps between gigs and things, and I just said yes to work that I got asked for a while, for a couple of years, right? And learned a lot from that, what I liked and what I didn't like. My regret is that I didn't use that time to actually start thinking about how to do sales. And so by the time I decided that I needed more work in a specific region and closer to where I'm based, and maybe also with more intent in a specific niche, I had made no progress in learning anything in the sales skill perspective or business development perspective, right? So that journey I had to get started on a year and a half ago. That was painful.
All right, let's fast forward now. I would say you're comfortable, but well, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I would say you're comfortable now compared to where you started from. So if you're comparing where you are now from where you started from, can you just give us an overview of, the progress you've made, and then what are your expectations in the next 12 months in terms of growth, probably the numbers of clients that you want to work with, the numbers of employees that you want to have, and maybe revenue if you want to share that.
Yeah. So in the work I do, the confidentiality of my clients is very important, right? And the reason business development in doing the work I do is so hard because nobody's going to put on LinkedIn that their business isn't doing well, right? Or that
Right.
typically not everybody is that interested in plastering all over the web that I've been working with them or that they've been needing help, or that makes for an interesting setup. I would say when I decided to make a pivot and really consciously go after that 3 hours segment, I realized I had to really build up visibility of my thought leadership there, right? Because I'd gotten the works for people who had worked with me and knew the quality of my work. So I had to do nothing for that. But I'm like, how do you get that across to people? So I feel very proud of the amount of content and visibility that I have generated. I think there is a really solid body of work out from me and by me that shows what I do, that shows what I'm capable is, that shows my peers, that shows the group of people I attract and collaborate with without breaching that confidentiality of my clients, right? Because that's been a delicate balance. And I'd say the reason for me, while some of that started to feel successful and where I saw those signs, is that I have obtained quite a lot of very good new strategic collaboration partners the past 12 months, so 2025. And so there is some former colleagues of mine who have their own consulting business back in oil and gas, who didn't know me that well, right? Although we worked at some point in time for the same organization, we didn't know each other well, but that we knew of each other. And they followed me and followed my activity levels and have now formally invited me to join them in a partnership, which is really exciting for me and shows, right, that is an example where I can say that the work I put in and putting myself out there and showing that thought leadership, etc., has really paid off. And yeah, that's starting to lead to work, right? I get referrals. Not all the referrals I get these days are coming from people I worked with. Some of the referrals that are starting to come in come from people who've seen me speak or who've been following my podcast or who've heard about me through others, but don't know my work firsthand. And that's what I was aiming for, right? So to me, that feels successful. What I'm hoping for in terms of growth is more work in the front end. I love chaos and mess, right? And I love helping people out, but I would love to get in even earlier, further and quicker. So that's where my 2026 focus is going for the chaos games. And to that extent, I'm also very much focusing on more work in the exit planning space. A lot of exits and mergers or acquisitions actually fail. And I often have gotten involved when those things have not worked, right? So an exit's not been successful, a merger's not been successful, and then that is like a through start or what now? And so that's the first angle I'm going for, to see if I can get in more preventatively, right? Get into that first cycle of a merger or an exit and actually help make them succeed, rather than come in as it's failed and try to do the second one better or clean it up and get it working.
All right. I think I hear you saying, yes, you need more work. You want more work, but not the one in the most chaotic situation, but something that is not too bad, not too damaging. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
Yeah, I think there's not enough of people like me, right? So if somebody were at situation, yes, I want to work with you. I want to help you today. But I want to try and figure out how I can use all that experience from working with clients that are in that space by playing a little bit of a part in having less organizations descend into that. How can I use all this, what I'm learning and what I'm seeing from working with all these clients? If I can help 2 or 3 organizations actually enlist help from somebody like me earlier than they would have done if they didn't know about me, that to me is a win, right?
Fantastic. Thanks so much for breaking it down. Let's go to some of the way you run your company. So we're going to look at some technology. Is there any AI tool or technology that you're currently leveraging in terms of your delivery that is helping you stay competitive today?
I am shopping around a bit for some agentic tools, mainly to automate some of the stuff that I just really don't want to do, or that's very labor intensive for me. Apart from using some of the basic
ChatGPT.
tools and the PRM related tools and all the chat stuff, etc. I've not actually committed to anything because I do think the struggle is real for somebody in a small business like me, I see so much being developed where people are trying to build a silo. And so to me, AI should be about super connectivity. But if you're then telling me an agentic tool and I have to put in all this data and all this information first and run with it to see if it's actually going to work for me, then you're also telling me it doesn't integrate with this and it doesn't integrate with that. And unless I switch providers for this or providers for it's
So what's the purpose?
color, I'm already done. And I'm like, no. Well, fortunately, by working with clients, right, and working with peers, some of which are larger organizations, I can sometimes piggyback on some of what they do. I've not found a lot of great tool suites for, relatively small user base, because it would be me and my virtual assistants. So it's a small team, it's a small group of users. And occasionally, if I work with somebody else, it might be a partner that I want to bring in to help you also use these tools. I've not found much that felt like it was less work than what it rendered. I made some progress actually making an AI clone of myself with all the content and stuff like that. And it felt very disingenuous. I really shouldn't find a lot of places where I felt good putting that out there instead of myself. Almost to the point where I'm like, my content is all accessible, right? So Kat can also do that for you almost. Yeah. So it's been a bit back and forth. I do actually I work with certain clients and industry segments with bigger players. And I do like what I'm seeing. Some of the players out there that are really playing like a super connector, right? That they're saying, we're going to be your infrastructure platform builder, but we are gonna, if you bring us some other agentic AI tool that we didn't have on our radar, but you're using it and you want to plug it in, we're gonna work with you to make sure that we can manage that interface, right? That is the attitude I'm looking for.
Wow.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, if you work by yourself, your standard operating procedures don't need all that. I always practice what I preach to my clients, right? Because I'm sort of, and yeah, I will adjust to the client I work with, right? I will work with their systems within their systems. So my only space for automation and technology is really in the business development space. I have somebody else do all the edit and tech work on the podcast, and they use all sorts of stuff, right? All I do is report, like you do here in Riverside.
Yeah.
Um,
All right. Thank you so much for sharing on that. The magic one question everyone get that. But before I ask you, I just want to follow up. This question should come after the magic one, but because you're touching on it. So given the nature of what you do, you just explained a lot of things. I believe you want to agree with me that there are things that you believe that if you could automate them, it's going to save you time, it's going to save you a lot of energy, and probably is going to help add to your bottom line. Do you agree with that? And maybe you want to share some of those processes with us.
yeah, for sure, right? I'd say just like everybody, I'm trying to keep up to speed on too many different data sources and too many information sources on what's going on, and also try to really create tailored content. I've gotten better at my prompts, right? I'm working, but I would love some kind of true knowledge management partner, right? Where it goes a little bit beyond the prompts and somebody really takes my content and just scours with some steer, right, the web for me and helps me prioritize therein, because I still need to process, right? I get every report or feedback thing with the same, there's no probabilities attached to success or most relevant or most urgent or I would love that. That I'm coming up to the 75th episode of my podcast, and I wanted to pull some quotes and highlights. And like, oh, that is actually a stupendous amount of my year labor still. Like, I'm like, why is it that the content is all out there, the transcripts and everything, and if I want to search through that in any meaningful way, that's not possible. Well, not possible yet unless I tailor something very in depth now. And I'm like, that feels awkward, right? I did try automation on, for instance, talk application to get on stages and stuff. And I actually stopped that. Because of AI, I actually apply with much more purpose, very specific, and I do the bulk of the work. Because I get, for instance, people applying to be guests on my podcast, and then you can tell that they're using an agent. You get the dumbest starting lines of emails, and I just delete them. It might be the most amazing guest, but I'm like, no, if we're going to do this geared volume. So I'm like, I don't want to receive that. So I don't want to put that stuff out. I thought this is volume. I've not found that volume leads to bigger success rate. I found that making that personal relationship, then sending out something quite small that says, are you at all interested in this, is worth more time than, yeah, I don't want to put my brand out like that.
Right. Thank you so much for sharing that. We can speak about that all day long. But let's move on. Let's move on to the magic wand question. If you have a magic wand today and you could instantly improve one thing about your company's operation, whether it's delivery, client acquisition, internal processes, what will it be and why?
I would, get a fairy godmother and let her be my hype woman. I love the work I do, but that whole pulling me and the brand out there and saying, look at her, look at what she's doing. I would love somebody who likes hyping, who gets excited by maybe what I do to do that for me. That would be absolutely amazing.
Wow. That's short and sweet, straight to the point. It's clear you know what you're looking for. But thank you so much for sharing that. Okay. And I think I would say your wish is my command. Just put it out there and the universe will bring it to you. Yeah?
I love that for 2026. That's my Christmas word.
Okay. All right. Okay. Let's dive into what you know. You talk a lot about rapid triage versus preventive strategies. For our listeners who might not be familiar, can you explain what business triage actually looks like in practice? What happened in that very first 90-minute business ER session?
Yes. So it's much like an emergency room for humans. I think that organizations and bodies are actually great analogs. If you do first aid, right, or if you've been trained in first aid, you're trained about ABC, right, airways, breathing, and circulation, and then they put the C at the front these days. To me, circulation is decision making, and triage for me in an organization always starts with, where are we with that? Typically, I come in and there's lots of energy being expanded, but sometimes it's very unguided, right? So everybody's working really hard, that the business seems to not really going in a strategic direction anymore. It's about, where are you today? Where are you trying to go? Is there something we need to do to stabilize the business today, right? Is it on life support? Can you make payroll? Do you need to go back? Are you under scrutiny by the SEC or by an auditor? Do we need to fix that? Do you have a supply chain that's completely down? And before we do anything else, is that where we need to go, right? So it's let's stabilize things so that we actually have a business left to save. That typically also includes a lot of difficult conversations, because sometimes I'm brought in by investors or by board members. And then the conversation is also like, okay, am I coming in because you kind of already decided that you no longer like trust or want to go ahead with some of the leaders in the business? Do we first need to realign who's going to be here at the end of this process and fix some of that? And again, to me, that's stabilizing the patient. And then we're going to look for, say, okay, listen, you probably have lots of unhealthy habits who all by themselves are not a big deal, right? And you're not going to fix everything. But what are the 2 or 3 things that if we fix that, you are actually a healthy, independently operating organization again? And can you tackle these 3 things by yourself, or do I need to help you find the right specialist or bring in an interim person or something to help you work on that challenge for a while? So that's the triage I do.
Okay, thank you so much for breaking it down. And also, you developed this priority tool called SCAR, SCAR, which stands for Strategy, Chaos, Agility, Review. Walk us through what makes this approach different from the traditional business consulting and strategic planning.
So I wholeheartedly believe that we are perpetually all trying to do too much. And if things are not going well, we have a tendency to just add, right? So when things are dysfunctional, we're adding extra meetings, adding extra checkpoints, going to look for more data. If we are uncertain, we're going to look for more information. But then because we're not sure what we're looking for, we're also just keeping everything and bringing everything in. So to me, getting up to basic, it actually working on the stuff that really needs working is a key tool to get better. But in that, I don't just talk about, okay, what needs to happen really now. Tell me what causes you to say this is what needs to happen this week or this month and not next, right? What's the deadline or what does this feed into or the why? And the amount of times that we kind of don't know anymore and we're like, yeah, because this wasn't working, so we should do something about it. I said, yeah, but out of all the things, is this still really now moving the needle on your business, right? And so when you sift through that, then we also do in this piece of work what I call actually stripping the patient, because half the time we're saying we need to do this now, and then my next challenge is, okay, out of this, what really needs to happen now? Because you've carved out this whole project or this whole challenge. But what part of it really needs to happen right now today? What part of it is maybe a phase 2 or a phase 3? Then we swap it down to the piece that actually is going to make a difference right now. And so by really bringing it up, what moves the needle in your business now and why? What creates value in your business? And then stripping it back to the basics. There is so much value in that whole deduction process, in that conversation, because it creates realignment.
Right.
Means you very clear priorities. And it's like, I talk about it as a scar, because if you get a cut in your bodies, right, what happens is that all these little bodies inside you are going to that wound to tackle that, right?
Yeah.
That's what you want. You want to activate the energy to the things that actually need work. But if you have 100 things, how is it nowhere to go, right?
Wow. I think I'm learning something new today, because the way you position what you do and the way you do it, I mean, similar to, like you said, like you go to a doctor and they try to analyze, break it down and make it, look so simple, because that's how you be able to get the right solution. I think this is really valuable. But I'm just curious, because I wanted to share maybe one specific, if not two, example of a company that came to you in a crisis mode. You don't need to mention their name, but I think our audience will love to know. Even personally, I want to know what the chaos, what the crisis looks like. And the breakthrough that you are able to give to them, how did you turn it around, and how long, it took you for you to turn it around?
Yeah. So there's a very public example that I can talk about, which was a company that made hydrogen fuel cells for trucks. So they matured that technology very successfully, and then they've done an IPO, so they've gone public, right, and raised a whole lot of money from all these shares to actually put these fuel cells in trucks. And what they've done is that they'd set up collaborations on different continents, Australia, Europe, the US, to do that in different formats on all these continents. It wasn't really successful in any continent, but the biggest challenge was with the European entity, which should be the front runner in this, because legislation around alternative fuel cells in Europe is huge and a big enabler there. But they'd set up a partnership that clearly wasn't functional, and so they put a lot of money in, and 5 months down, there was no money left, but there was also no fuel cells in trucks. So at the same time, independently, they were under investigation by the SEC for issues with the Chinese manufacturing of fuel cells. So there was a whole raft. The shares were worth nothing. I was brought in to have a look at the European organization and say, is there anything salvageable over there? Where are we at with this? Can you come and have a look at least? So it truly felt as if I went out as an ER doctor to just understand where things were at. There was so much lost in translation, not just in language, but in the background, right? It was a family organization, local versus people who came from multinationals and spoke that language. The headquarters was still growing at breakneck speed, right? They were still filling all their critical C-suite positions, COOs and all these people had been in their jobs anywhere from a month to 6 weeks. Same thing in Europe. they doubled that organization with very little steer. The partner wasn't set up for what it was supposed to do, but Videnties Element tried to go there. The turnaround was that we managed to at least stop the bleeds, that we also, stopped a lot of money running further out, made an assessment of what was there. I provided feedback to headquarters also saying, hey, listen, this is what I think you're after. This is what I think this organization can do. There's a gap there. And so then it's your choice, right? Do you want to build that or not? Or a lot of the lost in translation, right? Somebody who comes from General Motors and has done 30 years career there and still speaks GE and everything they ask, or was talking to somebody who's never worked other than in a small regional local manufacturing company with 5 people. They don't speak the same reporting language, right? They haven't seen the same things, and they are both willing and capable, but they're just forever at odds, right? So the biggest thing I did is actually help them put an interim manager in place in Europe who could actually handle that turnaround, right? And then with leadership say, okay, are we going to build that out, or are we slowly going to actually look for a better partner? And in the interim, we're going to salvage what we can and stuff. And then example at the other end of the spectrum is where I came in with a small baby boomer family-owned business, a manufacturing company, who built this company from cobbled together 7 different manufacturing processes, right? And they tried to do an exit, and the buying partner had walked away, and so they were hurting because they didn't want to continue running the business. But now what, right? So I helped them figure out why the buyout had failed. That included a lot of difficult conversations, and help them put their business better in the window, right? Quantify the value of their business in a way that buying partners actually would understand. So again, the lost in translation, and help them find another buying partner.
Wow, that's incredible. I mean, that's a piece of work in your hand, but you are able to solve the problem. I think that's the good news, and that's the success story we want to hear. All right. So you helping other businesses, solve their problem, making decisions under pressure, what's the biggest challenge you personally face in your own company that you think, well, within the next 12 months, I think we should be able to find a solution to it? Because I tell people, you are solving problem for other companies does not makes you immune to your own problem, So, yeah. So I tell people, this question I ask every time to say, yes, you telling us how you've helped other people, but are there something yourself that you think, I also need help, but either you're on top of it, either you got it covered, either you still, but at least our audience, we want to know so that our audience will not think, well, this is just a clean company that is just smooth sailing and they never had problem before. So that's the reason why the question is asked.
Yes. Well, if I have clients and deadlines, life is good, right? I'm really good with pressure and getting things done. But if I have to do stuff for me, so there's stuff that just needs to happen to keep the business ticking over, I struggle sometimes to work really on the things I should be working on versus the things I enjoy more, right? I can make very long to-do list, and there's things that sits on to-do list month after month and really should happen, right? I can procrastinate very well if it's for me, and if it's for my benefit, and if nobody else is going to hurt if I don't do it other than me. It doesn't always get done. I find it very hard to self-motivate when it's just me who's going to live with the outcome of it.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing that. If you're sitting in front of another business owner, probably doing the same thing like you, they're helping other companies solve their problem, and you have the opportunity of giving them a piece of advice, what will it be?
I had a period that I did not spend enough time with peers. And that's the period I made the least progress and did the most dumb things. I think even if you work for yourself, or if you are in a role where you don't have a lot of direct peers around you, I think it's important that you find a space where they are and spend some time with these people in some way, shape, or form that works for you, right? Whether that is some kind of virtual coffee chat or networking events or whatever it is that works for you. I think we need to remind ourselves and ask ourselves, do I spend enough time with peers to actually ideate, right? To kind of talk a bit through how you are doing things, how they are doing things, like you are doing here, right? Hearing how other people are going through these things. I think we need that. And I think, yes, you can get that from listening to things like this, but I think you also need a more relationship-based continuum from that. So people that you speak to regularly.
All right.
That also can say to you, hey, you've been telling me that you were going to do this for 3 months in a row. Or when we talked last time, you told me with the same energy, the exact opposite. We're calling it this, right? Or who appreciates and says, wow, you got that done. I've seen you work on this for so long and now the day was here, right? It's all of that too that you get from having relationships with peers that I think we sometimes forget about or forget to invest in.
Yeah, don't be a lone ranger. That's what I'm hearing from you. And that's a good piece of advice. Yes, thank you so much for sharing that. All right. Where can our listener connect with you if they want to learn more about the Chaos Game Consulting? They want to check about what you're doing. Probably they want to bring their business to the emergency room. You know, where can they find you?
Yes. So my website is thechaosgamesconsulting.com or thebusinessemergencyroom.com. The Business Emergency Room podcast is available wherever you're listening to podcasts. And I am very active on LinkedIn. I'm the first Maartje you'll find there, so you don't have to deal with the last name. It's Maartje. If you put in Maartje and chaos anywhere, you'll end up with me pretty quickly.
Fantastic, Maartje. Thank you so much for sharing your beautiful insight with us, with our audience. I am so much happy because some of the things you've shared is very, very unique that our audience definitely will benefit from. I have to say thank you to you for coming through and for sharing this with us. We really appreciate you and we want to wish you well in your future endeavor. And we also want to hope that your magic wand comes true one day. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Thank you.
You didn't quit your day job to become a full-time admin assistant. The Intelligence Forge podcast is sponsored by Permasize AI Forge. At Permasize AI Forge, we know you didn't start your business to spend 60 hours a week on paperwork, chasing leads, and managing endless admin tasks. You started it to build something meaningful and serve your clients. But right now, you're trapped in the day-to-day grind instead of growing your business. What if I told you our clients are reclaiming 15, 20 hours per week, increasing their revenue by 30 to 50% within 6, 12 months, and finally getting their lives back? We don't just automate random tasks. We build custom AI systems that eliminate the bottlenecks choking your growth, from leads generation to lead, nurturing and management to project management, to client follow-ups. Stop paying for an expensive, frustrating manual system. It's time to upgrade to strategic automation. Visit PermasizeAIForge.com and book your free business transformation strategy call today. Discover exactly how much time and money you're losing to manual processes and how to get both back. And don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the Intelligence Forge, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode packed with game-changing insights. Your future automated business is waiting.